Have you ever met someone who completely scrambles your brain? You're going about your day, everything makes sense, and suddenly you lock eyes with someone who throws your internal compass entirely off course. Today, we might call the aftermath of that feeling a situationship. It's that messy, confusing space where you're not quite a standard friend, but you're not exactly in a traditional romantic relationship either. The lines are totally blurred. We tend to think of this kind of emotional chaos as a modern problem, but 4 centuries ago, William Shakespeare was already mapping out these exact same internal messes. He did it in a piece called Sonnet 20, and right away, the poem hits you with a twist. Unlike the traditional love poems of the era addressed to women, Shakespeare directs all of his intense, passionate energy toward a young man. This piece sits inside his famous collection of 154 sonnets, first printed in 1609.
For almost that entire collection, the speaker directs his affection toward a mysterious, unnamed figure that historians now call the fair youth. We often expect historical poetry to sound polite and incredibly formal. Sonnet 20 throws those roles out the window. It reads like a raw, witty, and deeply frustrated vent session about a crush that simply cannot happen. The poem tricks you right out of the gate. It starts off sounding like a standard compliment about the young man's gentle heart and dutiful face. But almost immediately, Shakespeare shifts gears. He hits the reader with a single phrase that has caused confusion for generations. He calls this young man the master-mistress of my passion. In the 1600s, a mistress meant a female lover. By aggressively crashing masculine and feminine words into one title, Shakespeare is building an entirely new concept of beauty from scratch. The speaker loves that the young man possesses a beauty and gentleness typically associated with women in that era. But he also points out that the youth lacks the emotional fickleness that society unfairly blamed on women at the time. Shakespeare relies on this contradictory language because he has to. He is trying to describe a profound, intense attraction that simply refuses to fit neatly into the established gender categories of his world. Once that intense admiration is established, the middle of the poem suddenly changes its tone. The speaker's pure awe turns into a blend of bitter humor and obvious frustration. To explain his frustration, Shakespeare invents a little myth. He writes that when Mother Nature was first designing the young man, her original plan was to create a beautiful woman. But halfway through the creation process, nature fell a-doting. In plain English, Mother Nature accidentally developed a massive crush on her own creation. Because she was so obsessed, nature selfishly decided to keep the youth for herself. To do that, she added a single physical male characteristic, completely changing his sex right at the last minute. Behind the clever mythology, the speaker is agonizing over a very real, very human problem. He has found someone who feels emotionally perfect for him, but whose physical reality makes the relationship he wants impossible. This roadblock forces the speaker to make a compromise. The ending of the sonnet is a clever balancing act, where he accepts his defeat, but does it with a sharp, slightly jealous wit. He addresses the young man directly and concedes the physical side of things. Since nature made the youth physically male, he says women can have him for their pleasure. But while he gives up the physical body, the speaker aggressively claims the emotional prize. He insists that he, and only he, will keep the young man's love. In Elizabethan English, these words carried a specific weight. Pleasure referred to physical intimacy, while love represented the deepest form of emotional connection. The brilliance of this ending is how bittersweet it feels. The speaker is painfully accepting a physical boundary he knows he cannot cross, while simultaneously claiming total emotional victory. All of this intense affection brings up a historical question that readers have debated for centuries. Does this specific poem prove that William Shakespeare was gay or bisexual? It's tempting to answer that with a simple yes or no, but forcing modern identity labels onto a man from the 1600s distorts the reality of his time. They simply didn't view emotional and physical bonds in the same strict categories we use today. Yet, even without a modern label, the text remains remarkably daring for its era. Openly admiring male beauty with this level of intensity was a bold, risky choice for early 17th century England. You can actually see the speaker's internal turmoil reflected in how the poem is built. Shakespeare constantly blends opposites together, male and female. humor, and sadness, making the structure of the poem mirror his exact emotional state. Ultimately, the poem survives as documentary proof that human attraction has always defied simple categorization, long before our modern labels ever existed. By the time you reach the final line, you don't really solve the exact nature of the speaker's relationship. What you do is deeply feel the tension he's experiencing. At its core, the poem captures a universal human experience. It is about the beautiful, completely disorienting moment of meeting someone who makes your ordinary mental categories feel entirely too small. This is solid evidence to keep in mind the next time someone tries to tell you that Shakespeare is just dusty, outdated history with nothing to say about modern life. Human emotions have always been messy. The oldest poetry continues to survive and resonate because it tells the raw, unfiltered truth about those complications, rather than pretending they don't exist. If this breakdown helped you see a classic in a new light, hit the like button and subscribe for more. And drop a comment below with the next famous poem you want decoded into plain English.